Oh, are we in? Are we live?
We are.
Oh, this is exciting. Is there anyone in the chat? Oh, I see emojis. All right. Folks ready?
Yeah.
All right. Welcome to Women Leading Partnerships. This is a curious, thoughtful, and inclusive space. I'm Chloe C., your moderator for the Women Leading Partnerships feature panel today, and I lead content at PartnerStack. I'm the co-founder of the Feminism Project, media critic, activist, aiming to promote understanding through an intersectional feminist lens that includes calling for better representation for the underrepresented always. I'm excited and privileged to be able to have some important and necessary, very necessary conversations in this curious, capable partnerships ecosystem space with the goal and hope that this invites healthy change and supports equity for women and other marginalized identities in the workplace and tech. This is not a one and done conversation. That's never how change happens. This is a start and something we will keep working at. This campaign has brought me life, created opportunities to meet some incredible women in partnerships. If you're in B2B SaaS, you'll also want to learn from Sarabyn, Madeline Wing, who works closely with panelist Bailey over here today, Eliza Rijardo, Aidan Weinreb, Jennifer Rima, Louisa Groger, and the iconic Kelly Sarabyn, who is also here live today. These women have taken the time to think about the work. They share tactics on the how and always know their whys. Women project manage and lead with purpose. And introducing these women leading partnerships panelists today who are providing positive representation for women in B2B SaaS, we have Katie Bentz, channel partner manager at Aircall. This channel partner leader has more than 2.5 years of experience in partnerships. She was at Vidyard before this and knows a thing or two about managing channel partnerships across various ecosystems. She is not unfamiliar with being the only woman in the room, actively advocates for women, and even had a podcast called Bossy Women. I love that title, by the way. We've got Kelly Sarabyn, platform ecosystem advocate at HubSpot, a sort of SaaS celebrity. She leads tech partner enablement and advocacy, believes in driving revenue and building stronger brands with ecosystems. She is a recognizable woman leader in this space. We also have Bailey Beckham, partner marketing manager over at CallRail. She focuses on building agency and affiliate partnerships, building programs and strategy to support revenue growth. She does the boots on the ground work every day, and we're thrilled to have her share her lived experiences and insights into the good work. Some housekeeping with this awesome platform. There's a chat to the right. There's also a Q&A feature, so if you have questions, you can leave questions there. Speakers have our behind-the-scenes ability to communicate. The event will be recorded and shared with all registrants. The panel will be half an hour, followed by a 20-minute networking session, giving everyone 7 minutes with each of the 3 people they get matched with. So we're just going to get right into it. The reality is there are a lot of women working in partnerships, but this isn't always reflected on LinkedIn and other public forums. The wonderful world of, or in the wonderful world of B2B SaaS in general, the fact is the industry can still feel male-dominated and women remain underrepresented when it comes to leadership and thought leadership even. This doesn't necessarily reflect the work being done on the daily. So my first question is, do any of you folks have advice to help navigate male-dominated spaces? I'm going to start with you, Katie.
Yeah, definitely. And thanks for having us. Excited for this conversation. I think there's 3 things that I want to touch on. So one is being the change that you wish to see. I think regardless of your role or your tenure, you have value to offer. So don't be afraid to, post content on LinkedIn, advice, or your learnings along the way. I think that a lot of us women, including myself, we can feel imposter syndrome. And, we see all these people who somehow know the exact methods or steps that you need to take to be successful in partnerships. But some of my favorite people to follow are the ones that are in it right now. They're learning, they're posting the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so find the people that are willing to amplify those voices, let them amplify yours. 2 is to find mentors in the space you can confide in and go to for advice and encouragement. This doesn't have to be your direct manager. It likely won't be. It can be a teammate, a colleague, someone that you met through LinkedIn or a community. I've been fortunate to have some really incredible mentors who have invested their own time into helping me develop as a female in tech and in partnerships. And I'm beyond grateful and really excited to be able to do that for others one day as well. And 3 is, I think, knowing your audience on meetings. So like I said, I've been on a lot of meetings where I'm the only woman on that call. And so in general, like I can be a pretty emotional person. It's very easy for me to take things personally. And I found that especially when, working with men, which a lot of my day-to-day meetings are, keep things more factual, get right down to business. It helps me come across as more professional and confident. So just remembering that you can like still be authentic to yourself, but slightly adjust your communication style based on that audience.
Love that. That's a great answer. And so we were just talking a bit backstage before we came out here, and we're talking about that classic feminist analogy of the workplace can be like a road. What is the road made for? Cars. Women are like bicycles on that road, newer to the road, right? After the Industrial Revolution, and we have the feminist movement, and we are now on the road, but it wasn't necessarily designed for us. So staying on that road, navigating that road can be a little trickier. I was wondering if anyone had anything to add to that question on navigating the male-dominated spaces before we move on.
I'm happy to briefly jump in there. I think something piggybacking off of everything Katie said is really don't be afraid of failure. I think that a lot of the time we can get stuck in a world of imposter syndrome, myself included, every day, right? But as long as you remember it's okay to fail, it's okay, try again, bring people into what you're trying to do. I think that also helps the conversation really change from, what exactly can I do in a male-dominated space to what can we do together from this idea that I have in partnerships.
That is such a root partnerships. Kelly.
Yeah, I think super advice already given. Another thing I would kind of draw attention to is really knowing your principles and who you are and standing your ground and recognizing that sometimes this stuff's hard, right? Which I think goes back to Katie's advice to look for mentors. And I would say both externally and internally. Find allies, right? It's not just other women. Some men are very understanding and supportive of the cause and what Chloe was saying in terms of like the rules of the road and the systemic bias and those type of things. I think just acknowledging to ourselves, but sometimes it's going to be uncomfortable, right? Like it's uncomfortable to be in a space, especially when it's your job and you might really need that job, right? Like some people are more privileged than others and that they can more easily walk away from a job. And I think for people who maybe are like living month to month, it's going to be a lot harder to stand the ground and say, I'm not going to let my way of communicating be pushed aside or be told that if I'm not, hanging out at the at the bar with a bro culture that I can't grow in this organization. Speaking up, it's hard. It's not easy. I just want to acknowledge that because I think change often does require uncomfortable moments and having a level of courage. And when you are able to do that, like pat yourself on the back and recognize that that was not easy because you might not be getting that from your organization, which is why teaming up with women externally, finding the groups, finding advocates, surrounding yourself with that emotional energy and support can be really helpful because they can validate to you, yeah, that was hard and you did it anyway.
That's amazing and exactly right. Sometimes speaking up can feel daunting and no one likes to self-promote. It's always nicer when someone else does that for you. As a woman, part of this professional community, we can start shifting that culture. How? Second question, ready for this? How can we do better with amplifying the work of women in ecosystems and SaaS? Are there any notable efforts companies or brands are doing to support women in partnerships? Kelly, looking at you to kick this one off.
Yeah, this is definitely something I feel strongly about. Ever since I joined this space, I can't tell you guys how many times on LinkedIn I see someone post and then they tag like 20 men and then the comments are like 95% men. And I think that, as you mentioned, Chloe, there's a lot of amazing women in the space who have amazing perspectives and things to say. So it doesn't need to be so extreme. And one of the things I do is co-lead partnership leaders, women in partnerships arm. And we're really a top priority for us is not only making sure that partnership leaders, which has a ton of events for the space, that the panels have women voices on those panels and make sure that there's equal representation that the conference has enough women speakers that they throw every year. But also creating a list for people in the space who are interested in speaking, because a lot of times people will say, well, I wanted to have a woman speaker, but I was not able to find one. And, it's because they're linking on LinkedIn and they see those 20 people and they go to those people. So we're trying to create that list so we can circulate it and then provide it to people who put out content and do events in the space so that they can easily connect with women who have raised their hands and said, I'd be willing to talk. So I think one component of it is, working with organizations and people who create content like PartnerStack, who's making the effort here, right, to amplify women's voices and ensuring that we're connecting the speakers with the content producers and providers. That's definitely a good way. I think the other thing is mentorship, right? Like helping women and empowering women to learn those skills and to also see the value, because I think part of it is, I know a lot of women who are heads down in their jobs, they're killing it, they're doing amazing jobs. They're just not that interested in going out in the space and sort of like talking out, which I think is valid, and it's not for everyone, but I do think we can make an active motion to mentor people and to encourage them to share the expertise with the larger community and sort of share that value out to further help like kill some of these stereotypes.
I mean, debunking stereotypes is my favorite thing to do in my pastime. Bailey or Katie, did either of you have any like companies or brands or anyone that you'd like to highlight that to support the amplification of women in partnerships?
Well, I was just going to piggyback off what Kelly was saying. I think it's like she said, we often see the same people on every webinar and every podcast and every LinkedIn post. And so like, yes, it's great to have these specific women in partnerships events and International Women's Day things, but make that a part of your every event strategy, right? Like it can't just be ones that are specifically targeted towards women. Like men also need to be involved in this conversation, or it's never going to change. We're still going to be on our own island. So like companies making that effort to make sure that they're finding diverse panelists and speakers for every event is really important to me. And also I would just say, like, as Chloe mentioned, I used to have a podcast called Bossy Woman, and it was all about like reclaiming that word, because I think it has such a negative meaning, right? And so like, don't be afraid to be your own advocate and save your shout outs, put them in a kudos folder, like show those to your managers. You are your own best advocate. And so don't be afraid to like speak up about it and be proud of yourself. Like we all work really hard, and most men aren't afraid to go and post on LinkedIn about all their accomplishments. So like you can do the same.
Break out of that echo chamber,
Yeah.
And you're right, though. It isn't always on. That's why this is not a one and done. This isn't performative marketing.
Yeah.
This is actual change within the industry in which we thrive. We do have a question that came in before I move on to, oh no, we froze. Sorry, we're back. We do have a question that came in. It's how, and this is a question I'm going to throw out for everyone right now. How can we get more men involved in this effort towards equality? I'm going to say equity, even equality and equity. I feel like that we as women talk about this and do much about it, but we need the involvement and support of our male colleagues. So I think this is a question on how do we call for allyship from folks that have a little more power in the space. Does anyone want to take this one?
Yeah, I'll take that. I think that's a great question, because I do often think, like, for example, events like these, they often attract other women, which is great, because I think, as Katie said earlier, like that can provide its own value, but ultimately to affect real change, you need to spread it out and you need to involve allies. And I think one of the key things is, and unfortunately, this may be more work for women, right? Which maybe it shouldn't have to be like this, but this is the way it is creating very discreet asks and opening up that space where people can help, because I know a lot of people do want to help. And I will say from my experience, I've often been approached by things I'm doing in the space, and then people say, how can I help? And I don't always have a good answer yet. And that's on me, right? Because I think it does take time and effort to say, what is your ask? Now, it could be, I want you to commit to mentoring a woman in this organization, every 6 months, and to guiding their career and giving them that feedback to a senior executive, for example. Or it could be, it depends on their role, right? As we were just discussing webinars, right? So if you think of someone who's like a VP of partner marketing and they're putting out a lot of events, say, can we get a commitment from you to have, half of your panelists being women and half of your speakers being women? I think those are all fair and discreet ask, and it makes it easy for people who do want to help, right? I think that's what I would do first, because I think that's the lower lift. The heavier lift is probably going to be trying to convert people who aren't already highly sympathetic and wanting to help. And that education, and I guess honestly persuasion act is probably a longer, harder road where you have to kind of make the case and learn how to frame the conversation. I know, for example, in business, one things people often draw attention to is, like, for example, female founders, incredibly difficult time raising money. There's been a lot of studies on how VCs ask them different questions when they're raising money. And I'm sure there's other biases that come into play with those decisions, but that there's been stats around, hey, female founders actually deliver better results. So often having those type of arguments in a conversation can help people who might not have been as sympathetic in the first place.
It's true. And I think you're right about taking on that emotional labor. It can be, it is additional work, but with a strong benefit in the long term. I think if I had to give advice, I'm just going to jump in here. It's also just take care of yourself first, right? Like, know your limits, know what your bandwidth is. And I think it's not also like the expectation isn't on women to do all the work, but it's true. We can help get it started and guide it in the right direction a lot of the times.
Yeah. I would also add, like, in your everyday kind of work life, remember what your job is and prioritize the activities that will help you hit those metrics and what you enjoy, right? I think a lot of the times responsibility falls on the woman of a team to, like, plan social outings, take notes during meetings. It's a very well-known thing. And so remember that you're allowed to say no to these things. Obviously, if you enjoy them, do them. But like, I remember very clearly this meeting I was on with a team, and it was all men. They were asking for someone to take notes during the meeting, and no one volunteered. And I wasn't going to volunteer because I'm like, this is not how it's going to go. And the manager actually asked me if I would be willing to do it. And I said no, which was very scary for me. But I was like, I'd actually love to see one of the men volunteer, which, like, 20-year-old Katie, or however old I was shaking in her boots. But honestly, it set the precedence that, like, I'm not going to be the default person to do these things. And I think if you can make sure that in your everyday life, you're not just like being that default person, and you're actually saying straight up, like, can someone else do this, right? And this is why, it's going to go really far. And I've never been asked to take notes again.
I love that. And it's so true. But it's true, like the invisible labor. Speaking of invisible labor, there's a ton of that in partnerships. And the partnerships world can feel so mysterious to some. Layering in identity or gender identity into the mix can feel even more complicated, taking into consideration the additional and often invisible work that women often take in the workplace, note-taking, Exhibit A, or the workforce in general. I'm going to ask, do you have any advice for women partner managers on the daily? And I'm going to give this one to Bailey to start off. Would love to know your thoughts on this.
Yes. So it's funny, right? You used before the analogy of a bicycle where, women are the bicycle on the roads. Well, I also sometimes feel like partnerships, we're the ducks, right? We're keeping things moving up above the water, but down below we're frantic and we're chaotic and we're doing all of the things that maybe people don't see. And so something that I have definitely tried to make, a really focused effort on, and kind of, I think many female, partner managers or working in partnerships can do, is bringing people in and really saying, like, okay, I'm going to expose you to some of the things that I do, and we're going to really talk through it. And I'm going to position myself as your partner, as my stakeholder, but we're going to come in together on this. I think that really bringing light into all the things that we do day to day, whether it be, to Katie's point, like the note taking or the small things that we do just by default to get the job done, really bringing light to that is so helpful across the board, because then you don't feel so, alone, either because you are in a situation where you might be the only female on a team, or just because you're one of the, few partnerships folks on the team that really understand what you're doing and what your goals are. I think bringing people in and really elevating for that is helpful. And we can still be ducks and get it all, keep everything really calm on the surface while we're still frantic, but then you feel a little bit less alone in that day to day.
That's super helpful. Katie or Kelly, did either of you want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, I think also just, focusing on building your personal brand internally at your company and externally. For example, like I work at fully remote at a company that's hybrid. So I have to work extra hard at building that internal brand image for myself. So, sharing interesting articles or webinars with your team, scheduling coffee chats, sharing your wins. And then externally, for me, I've found a lot of value in joining like different Slack communities focused on partnerships, having coffee chats, and just like building your personal network of cheerleaders and figuring out how you guys can support each other. Like a lot of, men are doing this already. Like Kelly said, they're tagging each other on their LinkedIn posts, probably sending each other, asking them to comment, right? So it's like, we can do that too. If that's what the algorithm wants on LinkedIn, for example, like, why don't we do that as well? And so just like, don't be afraid to build your community and figure out how you can best support each other.
Yeah, allyship. And that PR strategy, I love to call it that way, like a little internal PR. I'm about to post this at this time. Would love if you engaged and help amplify it just a little. It does help drive messaging, right? And it does help kind of celebrate and acknowledge the work that is being done, because there's so much work that doesn't get recognized all the time. So we want to figure out clever ways to make that feel seamless as we kind of surface those things. Wanting to talk some highs and lows in B2B SaaS here. Anything that we should be celebrating right now, or anything we should be pausing on? Any trends happening in partnerships that are worth calling out? Ecosystems? Does someone want to start with that? Highs and lows.
I could start. I think that one good thing that is happening in partnerships right now, which kind of actually dovetails to the prior question, is there is a move to put more rigor around it. So, have all this new partner technology, really the role of partner ops is starting to expand. And I think we're still early days on all this, but I think the trend line is going in that direction. And where I think that helps with this conversation, right, is which also is part of the reason partnerships can be a struggle on this front, is the lack of those metrics. But as you start to develop those metrics, it makes it easier to tie back to the work that's actually being done, right? And who's doing it. And partnerships is always relationship based and is going to continue to be, which of course is a whole nother ball of wax in terms of like introducing bias into performance reviews and all that kind of stuff. But I do think that trend that we're kind of moving in that direction is a positive one. I think the other thing that we're seeing is probably two-headed, right? With the macroeconomic conditions being so bad right now. I think on the one side, we're seeing, especially in companies where partner programs were not yet established, seeing a lot of cutbacks and teams being slashed and people having to do even more with less, which I think is obviously a huge challenge. On the flip side, I do think some companies who saw that partnerships are a good way to lower customer acquisition costs, to be more efficient, are actually investing in them more and keeping them on. So I think these times could end up being good for partnerships, and in other ways they could end up setting the field back from where it was going as they're not given the time to prove it out. But so I think that definitely impacts the women conversation as well, in terms of, if you find yourself in the first position where either you're having to go back out and hit the road and find another job, or alternatively you're left maybe as like the only partner person, while before you were on a team of 5 or 6. And that really, all this kind of advice that's given in the conversation requires you probably to even double down more on amplifying your own value and what you're doing right now in the industry.
I love chatting trends, because it really gives us an opportunity to really look back and kind of see what we're doing, right? It's a kind of, I love the critical thinking aspect of them, like to be able to identify. Katie. Trends you're noticing?
I was just going to talk, it's something that I think we're improving on, but there's still obviously a lot of work to be done. And it's around, becoming more transparent around compensation. I think SaaS is getting better at it, right? There's more companies that are posting the salary ranges on the postings and whatnot, but it's a great step. However, there's still obviously a pay gap. And so the more transparent companies can be, it's going to help to reduce that. I have an experience firsthand where I realized that myself and another female colleague were being paid severely less than our male counterpart, who was an external hire, but neither of us had negotiated our offers when we got promotions. And so it led to obviously being like incredibly hurt. But that hurt quickly turned to action. And so unfortunately, we had both been laid off shortly after we found out. So we didn't get a chance to really take action within that company. But for myself personally, I made sure that when I started my job hunt, I was asking questions around like women in leadership, what does career progression opportunities look like? And I negotiated my offer based on like research I did within the industry. There's some really good reports that talk about compensation and partnerships. And so, using those as points within like negotiating can really help. So luckily I was actually able to nearly double my salary from that job, which was amazing. And I just really think that as women, like we need to be better advocates and realize like we can negotiate, we can do all these things, and we should be having conversations to make sure that like person at X company or an X role is getting paid like what they're worth. And it's up to us and up to companies to like make that a very normal thing to discuss.
Speaking of trends, a big trend I've noticed in partner leaders is this amazing ability to take learnings like you did and immediately action upon them. I feel like this is like a big characteristic of the partner leaders, or a common characteristic I've noticed, and in this especially strong ones.
Well, thank you.
Now, as we look ahead, the future, a strange one, let's be real. What do we need to move forward in a meaningful and more equitable way for women? I know we're kind of touching on it. We touched on the trends. We kind of looked back. We looked at some, but what can we do to do better moving forward? And we're processing Bailey. Bailey, you're going to come bail us out of this one?
We're going to try. No, but I mean, I think really following that trends conversation, right, is staying with those trends. I know Kelly mentioned, the technology piece. We're getting more support and partnerships through that, right? Really legitimizing what we're doing. So how do we build our own strategies to advocate for ourselves and other women in the space as we continue to grow with those new opportunities we're given? I think that also the conversation around just women in general in the workforce has become very trendy. It's a very buzzy topic, which is wonderful for us, but it's really holding ourselves accountable to continue that conversation beyond just, Women's History Month, International Women's Day, but really, really building it into our full strategy moving forward.
Amazing. Kelly.
Yeah, I agree. I think the other thing is just to remember these things are always multi-layered, right? There needs to be many different levels at which change is occurring, and really focusing from policies, right? Like America is notorious for having bad parental leave policies, and that disproportionately affects women. And the whole issue you see in a lot of different verticals and industries where as women start to have children, what was potentially sort of equal titles and almost equal pay really drops off significantly as women hit that age and life milestone. And what can we do as both individual companies and also as a society to kind of change that and affect change, and also on the individual level where we can support our colleagues who might be going through a particular troubling time with a child, for example, and how do we provide that support? Or being a caregiver for an aging parent. I think these are the things we need to always keep moving forward on, is that they're not ever one solution. We have to tackle it from different angles.
It kind of goes back to that invisible work, and studies have shown recently, especially that came out of the pandemic, that women were burning out. And it's because of that invisible workload that happens at work, and then the invisible workload that happens at home. And so what we do end up seeing, if we take a big step back and take a look at the bigger picture, is that women are working like 24 hours a day in various roles with various hats, and may be the definition of wild project managers doing all the tasks and organizing. Katie?
Yeah, I was just going to add, I think like in partnerships, obviously, one of the biggest parts of the role is like building and maintaining relationships. And women are so good at this, right? Like, I think if hiring managers and companies can care more and share more about like the soft skills that are important in partnerships roles, and then commit to investing in like training other parts of the role, I think that's something that they should really be focusing on, because some of my favorite people to work with at my partner orgs are like these women partner managers who are so organized. They like get things done. They show up. We have great conversations. We can like strategize. And so I just like don't see enough female partner managers in my network, at least. I hope that there are more and I want to connect with them. But I think like so often, you know, we see more women in like partner marketing, which is amazing. Bailey, love, like that's such an important role, but like having someone in more like of a revenue role, it's just, I don't see it as much. So focusing on maybe some of those like more soft skills, I think could lead to some really great hires.
That's amazing. I've got some questions. Are you folks ready for some questions that have been rolling in? Also, we can take some questions for everyone who's here right now. You have these very generous women partner leaders here ready for to share their expertise. This one came in from Tess. I run Instapage's affiliate program, and it has been growing very well and is a space I love growing into. But one thing I have noticed is the platform is largely packed with men affiliates. Is there any way to promo/spotlight women affiliates? It's a good question, actually. Thoughts?
So I definitely think there's an opportunity to highlight, you know, different groups within all of the programs we run and manage. Something actually that we've done here at CallRail this month is we took it a step back of not just highlighting, you know, agency partners of ours, but focusing in on women who are either owning those agencies or play a huge part in those agencies day to day, and asking for that feedback from the group was actually really exciting. You did see a lot of those male allies come forward and say, hey, I really want to nominate, you know, this strategist or this specific person. And from there, we were able to really understand and form better relationships to know there are people and women behind sometimes those male points of contact that we might see every day. And so sometimes just asking for that can really break down that barrier and get a really great conversation going.
I'd also add, like, if a large majority of your affiliates are, you know, male, like what is your acquisition strategy? How can you tailor that to attract more women to become affiliate partners? So digging into that. And I would just say, like, yeah, how can we bring on more so that we can spotlight them?
It's true. And part of it is recruitment too, right? And representation. Yeah. Available. And having more conversations where we find women partner leaders popping up from everywhere and write down their names and emails immediately. This question, and I actually saw that, Katie, you answered it already in the chat, because like, not you being able to multitask, but the question was, any suggestions on conferences or groups to join and attend? Now, I just wanted to put this out here for the other folks here too, in case you had any ideas here.
Just partnership events, or yeah, I would say that there's 3 big events in SaaS partnerships that is focused on that role, which is SaaS Connect, which is put on by the Cloud Software Association. Crossbeam, which is a partner tech company, puts on Supernode. Partnership Leaders puts on Catalyst. And that is, I think, April, June, and August of this year, respectively. And then I know there's also Women in Channel events specifically. Now, Partnership Leaders Catalyst does have a Women in Partnerships luncheon. So come to it. It's really fun. But I think that if you are in the channel, like the traditional channel, which tends to be more of those larger tech companies and larger sort of system integrators and consultants off of that space, they do have a Women in Channel event that I've heard very positive things about. I think it was in New York last year. I'm not sure when the next one is.
Ooh, those are good. Not you just having a list of like events ready to go, Kelly. I was like, wowee. Who needs a calendar right now, Bill? Oh, did you have something to add?
I was just going to say Kelly has it all, so I've got nothing else to add there.
Iconic, Kelly Sarabyn. Another question came in, folks, and it is, what has been your experience switching jobs in the partnerships ecosystem? I think this one might have been triggered by Katie. I see so much support for men trying to find new opportunities, not that many for women.
Yeah. So speaking to my experience when I was laid off, I was very nervous. It was kind of at the beginning of this whole wave of layoffs. And so I was very nervous to post anything on LinkedIn. And I had someone encourage me to just make a post and kind of put the ego aside. And I was like so blown away by the response. It's still something that like makes me so emotional thinking about. But I would say like lean on people who are amplifying voices. Like I had a specific person that I had worked with at my previous company, and he is like very good at connecting people. So he made introductions, and then from there, those people made introductions. So it sometimes just takes one person to make like the right introduction. So don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to put it out there. Like, I don't know how many people have been laid off in the last year, but it's a lot. And it's a lot of people that I'm close to. And so it's like, okay to ask for help. There's no shame around it. But I think like looking for new opportunities, sometimes it's just about asking and getting the right person to start making those introductions for you.
Yeah, I would agree. I would just say, I think in general, the partnerships field and people are very willing to help. But I mean, I think the best thing you can do, to Katie's point, is write up that, can you help me? Here's the type of role I'm looking for. Just send it to everyone. You will get good response. Not everyone's going to respond or help. And I feel like often women more than men are like hesitant to make that ask, while men are like, I'll just blast everyone I've ever talked to for more than 5 minutes. So I feel like, now whether that's sensible or not, I think when it comes to jobs, don't be afraid to do it. Just put it out there. And as someone who's recruited panels for years, like, don't worry about people who ignore you. It's not personal. They don't care. Like, I've been ignored or told no so many times, and it doesn't bother me in the least, because I'm like, well, enough people say yes. So just keep asking, and just realize that people are busy, and it's not personal. Like, when people don't respond, it's not a rejection of you or what you asked. It's just like they're busy. So just keep putting yourself out there, and we'll all help where we can.
I can echo that as a former journalist. I still always have that in me. Always, as a journalist, I got trained really early on to just keep bugging people. Persistence is key, especially if you are on a mission to find the truth and to have as many conversations as possible to help provide context, right? It's those conversations that you got to keep having. And as the world evolves, so do we. We got to keep it up. We have, I think, one more question that we can answer with the time, because it's almost time for the switcheroo. And this question is, our company is a bootstrap startup, and we've decided to start a partnerships program. I believe it is the right move, but I'm having trouble knowing what to prioritize. Any advice on building from scratch? Seeing nods. Does someone want to take this one?
I can take this really quick. I think starting from scratch, I would try to look very closely at what the strategic priorities are of your company, and then take a look at which partner type is most likely to meet those most effectively. So if you're looking to do retention, for example, you probably want to look at technology partners or implementation partners. And then I would take your best guess on what an ideal partner would be for your organization and try to ramp one up as quickly as possible, and then see what you get out of those KPIs, and then study those learnings. If it works, start to get more in that bucket. If not, try a different partner type and see what you get. So start small, try to prove out some value off a handful of partners, and then scale up from there. That's my 1 minute advice. Since we only have a minute.
No. Do we have another question? Did roll in, but do we have time? Oh, no, I'm sorry. We're getting ready for the transition. I think Alina is going to let us know what happens next. That was ominous. Sorry. I was just waiting for something to pop up on the screen. But I think we will be taken to a breakout, or we go back to the lounge first, and then we'll be paired up with folks. And here is Sid. Hello. It's our male ally.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sid from PartnerStack. I lead the customer marketing team here. So we will now...
Sid, you cut out. You're back.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about that,
Hi.
guys. Now, I don't know what everyone heard, but I'm Sid from PartnerStack. I lead the customer marketing team here. We will now end this session and be kicked back to the lounge. Once you're in the lounge, you'll see a button to join the networking session. So be sure to click on that. You'll be paired up with 3 different people from all the attendees that are here, 7 minutes each. So you get to have a great chat with some of the awesome people that we have on this call. So I'll let Will now end the session, and we'll see you all in the networking side of things. Thank you, everyone.
See you over the